Get on.
Looks like there are 5 of them, but only 3 of us here. That means, according to Trudeau logic, we're 7 up. I'm not sure how it works, but it's how it works. Okay. Over here.
Hello to all you Patriots out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 247 of Canadian Patriot Podcast, the #1 live political commentary podcast in Canada. We're recording on July 22nd, 2020. My name is Andrew, and joining me tonight are Gavin and Alan.
Ben, we'd love to hear your feedback about the show, so please visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Version of the show is available on Stitcher and iTunes.
And I realized I didn't update the show notes, and Monday night stuff was in here, so check the podcast out on social media. We can sometimes be found on Facebook and Instagram. Also, clearly, we need your help to support the show and hire me an intern so someone updates the show notes. Become a Patreon. Patreon.com/CPP. You get a better quality of the version of the show for just $1 an episode. And since we've moved to this 2-show-a-week COVID format, Patreons also get early access to the midweek show. Show You're Not a Communist. Buy a CPP t-shirt for just $19.99 plus shipping and theft. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Follow the link all the way on the right side. Time for my favorite segment. That's called What Are We Drinking? We'll go clockwise on my screen, and we'll start with Gavin. Gavin, what are you drinking?
I am once again drinking Coors this evening that was graciously donated by a listener, so cheers to you.
I'm drinking coffee and water. It's especially entertaining.
I am also drinking the government juice. I went running, and running is awful, and it's warm. So
running is the worst.
Hydrate.
I've been running 3 times a week for the last month or so, and it is watching a fat man run is unpleasant for everyone, especially the fat man.
Were you trying running while closing your eyes so you don't have to watch?
I did that once. Apparently, I ran into traffic, so I can't do that anymore.
Yeah, no, it's probably for the best then.
So the reason that we are gathered here today to talk about the Conservative leadership race, because everybody should have their ballots by now, and remember your return ballot is due on August 29th. Also, I want to express my extreme disappointment, echoing Marty's sentiment from the Monday night show. The Conservative Party is at an all-time high for the total number of members, with less than 270,000 members. The Conservative Party is at an all-time high for members, with less than 270,000 members. I feel like I need to say it once more slowly for the kids in the back. That is such an abysmal turnout.
Yeah, it's almost like there's 2 million people that should have signed up that haven't.
Now, does that include, like, how far back do those records go? Because the Conservative Party itself is only, 6 years old, right? Or does it include
this is all of the
Conservatives
current party members that are current party members that are eligible to vote in the leadership election is 270,000.
No, I meant in terms of the history of the party. Like, did that include the alliance and the CPC, the
10
Progressive
years.
Conservative?
I don't think it includes the Progressive Conservative or the alliance. I would imagine that figure goes back to 10 years for the beginning of this party.
Okay, so it's not a lot of history, but at an all-time high, and it's still only 270,000, and that's I suppose that makes for an easier time to count ballots if we're looking for the positive in things.
Well, I mean, it is nice to have that silver lining. It would also be nice if people would spend the $35 that it takes to become a member.
I think it was 15. Yeah. But yes,
is that all it is? It's 15 to be a voting member?
I'm pretty sure it was $15.
And either way, basically the cost of going for lunch, either at a cheap place or an expensive place. If you can't spend that to help have a say in your future, potentially, GTFO.
Well, and that's where my extreme disappointment comes from your average Canadian. I mean, 2 million firearms owners should all be politically active, and okay, so not everybody's going to be a conservative because some firearms owners are not single-issue voters, I guess, because they care more about the gay stuff than their guns. I really don't know what else, like, I'm not sure what trumps the ability to own private property and exercise your own individual freedoms. I'm not sure what those other issues are that would outweigh that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like to consider myself a single issue voter because for the most part, I think that that's kind of dumb. However, there are times when that single issue is a really friggin' important one. Like, I don't know, yeah, private ownership of stuff. And I mean, guns especially because, you know, once they take those away, all the other rights become that much easier to take away. So it is kind of a really important one, in my opinion.
I'd say that's a really good comparison.
That's my problem with this. Is like, if you don't have guns, what do you have? The government gets to tell you to do whatever they want to do. They already do that. They're basically without repercussions. So let's completely take away whatever standing we have as individual citizens with the right to own property. I don't know. I don't think there is a more important barometer issue for how a party feels about the people that are electing it.
I would also like to point out that even Marx thought it was important for citizens to own guns. You can't have a revolution if you can't fight the power.
I think Marx was also in favor of taking their guns away once he got into power, but that might be a separate issue.
Yeah, but I mean, at least they've realized the potential need for that because, I mean, what was it? Mao had the, you know, change must come through the barrel of a gun and all of that as well, right? Like, they realized that these things were needed in order to affect the change that they wanted. But yeah, then maybe, you know, after that, they get rid of them.
Talk some number stuff. Fundraising numbers, I think, are not a great indication of how the party is doing, but let's talk fundraising numbers because those are metrics that we can actually look at. Also, what the heck, Derek Sloan, publish your numbers because I don't have anything current for you. I don't know why he's behind on publishing his figures, but
because he's so far behind, it doesn't even matter anymore.
Possibly. So front runner, total donors, O'Toole, the total donor number when they had sent out the ballots was just under 12,000 donors that had donated through the O'Toole links, and just over 10,000 individual donors had donated through the McKay links. Lewis did remarkably well. Lewis did over 12,000, like 300 more than O'Toole. Now, where it breaks down, ignoring Sloan because we don't have current numbers, in Q1 he was at roughly the same number of donors in Q1 as Lewis with about 2,500. Lewis more than doubled in Q2. Even if Sloan doubled, like, okay, he's at 5,000. Cool. We don't know if he actually did that, though. Total numbers, though. So Lewis is at a little over 12,000 individual donors, but under $1.5 million. Whereas O'Toole is just a hair under 12,000 donors and $2.1 million. So your basket size for the O'Toole donors, I think, is a little bit better. But McKay comes out ahead on the dollar figure with only the 10,200 donors. He's at almost 2.3 million.
I guess it's all those Liberal Party members that are donating to one of their own that have the deep pockets.
Well, I wonder if that's not. I find that to be very interesting that McKay has the least amount of donors but the most amount of money.
And by like a
is the
significant margin too, right? Like, you know, just over 10,000 versus roughly 12,000 in both cases. Like, that's
and $1 million difference.
Yeah.
Like,
he's got more people with deeper pocket, or fewer people with deeper pockets that are contributing more. So to me, that's an indicator that the people that have the money are more interested in supporting someone that has better name recognition.
Curious if one of the donors was We Charity.
I guess we'll find out at the end, won't we?
Maybe. Somebody look into what kind of real estate McKay has. for reasons, unrelated reasons. I do think this speaks well to Lewis, though, that having the largest number of total donors, even if it's the least amount, because that to me likely means that a lot of people bought party memberships to be able to vote through the Lewis campaign links, but didn't actually donate anything to the Conservative Party. That's my suspicion with those figures. And if that's the case, I think that is very promising for Lewis.
That's quite reasonable, quite a reasonable conclusion, I think.
Yeah.
We've...
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Alan. I was going to say, we've also got early polling numbers. Looking at the end of May and then the end of June figures, we'll start with the end of May. Main Street Research, 21st of May, just under 8,000 people polled. All of the people polled were CPC party members, asking them how they would vote if the election were held on that day. 39% McKay, 31% O'Toole. So reasonably close, and I think that the margin of error on this, don't quote me on it, I think it was ±2, might have been ±3.
Yeah,
so they're reasonably close. Lewis, 9%, Sloan, 6%. So not great for Lewis and Sloan. But McCain and O'Toole, with a 2-point margin of error, that's close. Like, that's very close. And I don't think the sample size is unreasonable with 8,000 people, given that we have 270,000 people to vote in the election. Like, that's not a terrible sample. Yeah. Ledger poll at the end of June, not as good. This polls all Canadians. The sample size is 1,500. If the election were held today, who would you vote for? This is not just party members, but all Canadians. And the polling goes 18% McKay, 5% O'Toole, 4% Lewis, 2% Sloan. I don't think the sample size is a good indication of anything. But if we take these numbers to be true, because Ledger's usually not awful, the margin of the margin of not error, but like the margin of reality on their polls tends to be a lot higher. But
yeah, I mean, especially like at least on the other one,
O'Toole and Lewis, that's not like that's pretty damn close.
Yeah, but at least on the other one though, like it's a significant number of the people that are actually actively going to be able to vote. Whereas, like 1,500 of all,
the thing that I think is telling with the Ledger poll is that it is all Canadians, and Lewis is doing basically as well as O'Toole.
Yeah.
When you look at all Canadians, admittedly, the 1,500 person sample is kind of a shitty sample size.
Now, here's a question about that poll. Were they asking who would you vote for Prime Minister, or who would you vote for to lead the party? Because I think those are two different questions. Or two really distinct.
I believe it was a party leadership question, but I'd have to go back and look at Ledger to make sure of that. I think it was a party leadership question.
Okay. Because then that can skew the answer as well, right? If you're just asking all Canadians, then somebody can, who doesn't have a real opinion and just picks a name, or actively wants one person to be elected leader because they think that somebody else has a better chance of beating them in the general election.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a major distinction that we're going to have to talk about, is the difference between the Conservative Party election and the general election.
I agree.
Because I think these are two different things. I think the person that can do well, or the people that will do well in the party race, are not necessarily the same people that will do well against Trudeau and Singh in a general at the federal level.
I agree, and I think it's a really important distinction, because I think that I'll be the first one to say it. I think it would be absolutely hilarious to have Trudeau go up against Leslyn Lewis, Dr. Leslyn Lewis specifically, and run the same campaign platform of racism, sexism, and environmental disaster that he ran last time.
Yeah, I mean, don't go for the old white guy.
So good.
Yeah.
It would be. I think it would be. Everything else aside, I think that would be movie worthy. A movie worthy performance with Will Ferrell playing Justin Trudeau, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of I don't know, Whoopi Goldberg as Leslyn Lewis. I think it would be absolutely hilarious to do this backwards, in 10 years, and go, wow, what did we actually do here?
Yeah,
Yeah, let's talk about Lewis because we've alluded to that a little bit, and I mean the memes would be so good.
It would be amazing.
Yeah.
So obviously she's a visible minority. She's a Jamaican immigrant to Canada. She was born in Jamaica, emigrated here as a child. She's a woman. She's only 49 years old, and I say only 49 because most politicians actually older than dirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's a Toronto-based lawyer
And an entrepreneur. Sure.
Yeah,
well, she's got a whole bunch of credentials here, but
yeah, she graduated from Osgoode Hall and York. Lawyer, also was a TV show host.
holds 2 master's degrees. One is in environmental studies. She also has a PhD in international law. So she's done a bunch of corporate law. She's done a bunch of litigation stuff. She's done some fundraising things. She's part of the Ontario Trillium Foundation, which I think is interesting because that's a provincial charity.
Yeah.
So the Trillium Fund is a thing that other not-for-profits in Ontario can acquire funding from to do public works for. So like if you have a not-for-profit that wants to put in a handicap accessible building, you can ask the Trillium Fund to help pay for it, and they'll give you some amount of money, and it's not a lot of money. I think when we looked up for the gun club, I think we were talking about like $1,000 for a wheelchair ramp kind of a thing. And then she's also the chair of something called the Partnership Committee, which is very difficult to figure out what that is because it's a very vague search term in Google. I'm going to assume it's a Toronto-based thing, based on that she's from Toronto.
Probably.
So I do like the whole, like, she's a visible minority, cisgendered woman. Like, all of this, the memes would be very good. The detractor, I think, is her political experience more than anything else.
It should be noted.
Ever run?
It should be noted. She got a really late start. She was a replacement candidate in the last election, and she came in. I mean, she came in it wasn't a close second, but it was second place. Like she gained a lot of ground, despite having a very late start and not a lot of fundraising opportunities.
And I get that you go in, you're not there from the start, and you don't have the fundraising dollars behind you, and you don't have the airtime or the name recognition. But my bigger concern is that if she becomes the leader of the party and isn't an MP, she won't be able to be the prime minister. And I don't know if that puts us into a better position or not for the next election.
Yeah. I mean, she's definitely.
I don't know what happens then. Like, what do we do if you're the leader of the party and you're not an MP? Because you can't be in the House, so how does that work?
Yeah. She's a very interesting candidate, though. Like, you know, despite some of her socially conservative views that there seems to be a lot of people that are against her for, she still does very well.
Well, and I think a lot of that is because people don't want to be anything even remotely close to racist.
I mean, that's entirely possible. But I mean, in some of her socially conservative, some of her socially conservative views kind of go against some of the views of her.
Let's talk about some of the socially conservative views, because I think, in some of the interviews she's been in versus the way that articles have been written about her and things have been reported, I see a difference. So what would you consider some of her social conservatisms to be?
Well, I mean, the fact that, she wants to be open to debating abortion. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, because you should always be willing to debate stuff. That's kind of how Parliament works. But the fact that she kind of is open to reopening that thing sets a lot of the moderates and the, left-leaning people off, because they think that that's a done deal and we shouldn't even talk about it anymore unless it's to lessen the restrictions on it.
My big concern about her intent there, and I was reading up on this just before the show, is that the way that she wants to frame the discussion is around gender-specific abortion, which I still don't understand how you could possibly enforce that, and coerced, which makes sense, right? And not somebody not being coerced into a procedure. I respect that discussion. The gender based to me, or the gender based decision, there'd be absolutely no way to enforce that, in my opinion, unless there was some way to guarantee that the person making the decision didn't have that knowledge, which to me is the slippery slope towards setting setting gestation limits and things like that. And frankly, I don't think that anybody else has the ability to make that decision for someone else. And so that's the way that it's being framed is more of a concern to me than their opinion.
Absolutely.
See, I have a similar take on this, because it doesn't strike me that she is, strictly speaking, anti-abortion, and it's not that we want to stop abortion. It's more that she wants to have more of a discussion around the eugenics of it, that we're not doing it selectively.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to that. I don't see that as a bad thing. And the other thing that I had seen in an interview with her was that she wanted to reduce the government funding for it and instead direct that money to parenting services. I can't think of the name of the thing now, but like something to help people who have unplanned children. It's like, again, I don't see a problem with that, because I don't want people killing children. That doesn't, right? This is the same as the eugenics thing. Like, I don't want you to kill unborn children because they're a certain gender. I also don't want you to kill unborn children, but like, you know, it's your body. I get that at some point, but it's my tax dollars paying for it. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Your body, your dollar,
somewhere along the line too.
Yeah.
Right? Because I don't want to fund things I disagree with any more than I want it to be enforced on. I don't want my views to be enforced on somebody else's body any more than I want their views to be used with my tax dollars.
Yeah, which is fair, but I mean, that's the problem though, is that like, to even say you're willing to open up the debate in the current year, regardless of what part of the debate, that, because the media is going to spin that, and they already have, and that's going to, as we already know, nobody pays attention to anything. So they're going to just hear what the CBC says and go, oh, no, forget that. You know, and same with her views on the conversion therapy, right? Like, I mean, if it's voluntary and somebody wants to pay their hard-earned money to go and have the gay talked out of them, that's their choice, man. Like, let them do it. Whether you think it's going to work or not, who cares? Like, that's what they want to spend their money on, and that's what they want to do with their life. Go right ahead. But you know, you can't even say that these days, because then you're, you know, a homophobe and a sexist and a racist and a whatever is term they like to throw at you.
I was reading an article somewhere, I'm pretty sure it was in Maclean's, I'm just trying to pull it up now, that suggested that she'd actually had an abortion while she was in college. And I'm just trying to confirm that, because that could potentially change the discussion entirely.
Yeah. Well, you keep turning on that. I'm going to talk about one of the other detractors I have with her. Aside from her not currently being in politics or holding a seat, aside from her social conservatisms, which I really don't think are all that conservative. Talking about, like, you know, talking about selective abortion, I don't know that that's terribly socially conservative. I'm not sure. Right. Okay, talking about conversion therapy, again, I'm not sure that's super conservative, but sure.
Yeah.
I don't think she's going to play particularly well in Quebec. Despite being a woman and a visible minority, she does not parlez-vous français particularly well. And I think that's going to make it hard for her to do well in general with the French-speaking population of our country.
Yeah.
That's entirely true. The question is, will it matter in the end? To me, that's a skill that can be learned, and theoretically, she's got some time to do it.
Yeah. And I think it can be done, and other MPs have done it, and McKay did that when he was new into politics. He went to a language school in Quebec with other MPs and learned how to parler français, and Look at how that turned out. We got the Conservative Party from the PC and the Alliance merger.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that's going to make it difficult for her in Quebec because I don't think she's going to get the brand recognition if she doesn't do well in French debates.
Yeah.
Not that I think Trudeau speaks French particularly well, but he is at least fluent. He certainly ums and ahs a lot less in that language.
Yeah. Maybe she should just like go full Catholic, and that'll help get the French vote.
Yeah. Sorry, it was an article in Maclean's.
Conservatism.
Lewis has spoken openly about her own unplanned pregnancy during law school, and that formed her opinions. So it sounds like she's speaking from experience, and it's hard to argue with somebody who's gone through it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
there's my interning for the night.
Good work, well done. Let's talk about a little squinty eyes. By that, of course, I mean Peter MacKay. So he's our oldest candidate on the docket for this. He's 54. He's obviously a white male. He's also a red Tory, but that's a different thing.
Yeah.
He has a rather storied political career. MP for Central Nova Scotia for 10 years. Pictou, Antigonish, and Guysborough for like 7 years before that, from the late 90s into the early 2000s. Under Harper, Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Minister of National Defense, Minister of Foreign Affairs, all at various years and times. Deputy Leader Conservative Party after the merger, and he was the leader of the Progressive Conservatives at the time of the merger into the PC Party. And before he was a politician, he was also a lawyer, first in private practice and then working as a Crown Attorney in Nova Scotia.
Well,
my general opinion of politicians is that they should be treated like diapers, changed often for the same reason. One of the big detractors for me is that Peter MacKay has been sitting in office for too long, and before that, he was also suckling at the government teat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been in politics since '97. That's not a small amount of time.
Well, I mean, that's the pros and cons to this. I don't like that politicians have a job for life. That's not what this is supposed to be, but I also worry about novice politicians trying to run a party or run a cabinet.
Yeah.
Is like, MacKay does have 10 years of cabinet experience under Harper, which were some of the better years in recent Canadian history and in most aspects, unless you're a leftist, in which case you were literally living under Nazi Germany. But
yeah,
I don't know. I think Lewis, I feel like, lacks the political experience to do well, and MacKay, I feel like, has been in government for so long without accomplishing anything that it does not merit giving him another opportunity to do nothing, because he has spent 20 years in politics and accomplished very little.
One has held some key positions, right? Like,
well, that's the thing. Particularly as the Minister of National Defense is the part of politics where I was paying attention, where he was involved. The Canadian military was in Afghanistan at the time. He made many trips to Afghanistan. He was regularly in the news, but he didn't do very much for the military. He didn't do much for the individual members. I don't think he accomplished anything when he was the Minister of Foreign Affairs, but that only lasted a year. And I don't think he accomplished very much when he was the Minister of Justice, but that was only for 2. But the 6 years he was Minister of National Defense, he was really, really mediocre at it. Not bad at it, just not good. Like,
well, I suppose mediocre is better than bad.
I mean, yeah.
Well, and that's what, I'll take mediocre over bad. Like, Harjit Sajjan is a bad defense minister. He is not good, and he is hurting the military, and he is not listening to the intelligence people. He is not doing, as an intelligence officer, you would expect better of him. He has relied on his military service. He has lied about his military service. You know, the planner of Operation Medusa, a lying person, of unkind things to say about that. But MacKay was just mediocre. And I don't think that he deserves another kick at the can as a result of that, because all of this time that he spent in the Harper cabinet, he doesn't have much to show for it.
Well, and I think between them, if Lewis is open to having advisors that have experience in the various things where she doesn't have experience, then I think that more than makes up for McKay's mediocrity. I think the two. I think that would offset.
Possibly. I mean, he is supposed to be the great arbiter, right? He's the person that brings people together, and he's such a. Harper had talked about how he was such an integral part of the cabinet, and it's like, okay, but like he doesn't accomplish anything. He doesn't do anything. Well, he's not.
Some people are forever destined to be a bridesmaid and never a bride, right?
Maybe that's the case. I don't know. He strikes me as mediocre is really the right word for him.
Yeah. He's got a lot of other things too, like, his wife and the involvement with We Charity and her views on bringing ISIS fighters back, and his views on like
talk about some of these things. Well, let's talk about guns. I guess we skipped over Lewis with guns. We should go back to her gun stuff later. But let's talk about McKay. I think this was in 2002. I'm reasonably certain this was in 2002. McKay wrote a letter in favor of banning assault weapons. And now McKay is in favor of overturning the recent order in council and also Bill C-71.
Yeah.
So we had the same gun laws in 2002, and the order in council bans assault weapons almost exactly the way that he argued for in his open letter at the time.
Yeah. And I mean,
why do I trust the squinty East Coaster?
So, I mean, it's possible that he was misunderstanding things at the time. It happens. I know our gun laws are weird and don't make a lot of sense. And maybe he was still under the impression that, like, actual assault weapons, and by that I mean ones that have the fun switch, were still legal for the average citizen back then, and he was talking about those. But if that's the case, he should be public and clarify his statement, and that he has since learned better, but he's not done so. So it just makes him look like he's flip-flopping and trying to, catch the flavor at the time.
And that I really think is my problem with his stances, and I think that's true of a lot of things, like his stance towards Western Canada and the oil industry. He's all about jobs for the East Coast. Why is he not all about jobs in the oil patch?
Because he represents the East Coast, and he's from the East Coast,
so,
and his grandparents immigrated there, or great-grandparents, and that's what he cares about. And the exact same way that the people in the West don't care about the people in the East, except that they have to because they keep shipping all their money over there. I think that's going to make it very hard for him in a general election, with not that there's not enough votes between Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritimes, but he's not doing very well in Ontario. He's doing well in the Maritimes. In the Western Canada, he's doing very poorly in all the polling. And I don't think this is going to improve things, because if he wants financial backing, it's not coming from the East Coast. It's going to be people with oil money. It's going to be people in the energy industry. To a certain degree, it's maybe people in Ontario, but that's for a different reason. The other piece Gavin alluded to. Let's talk about his wife. Nazanin immigrated, from Spain, but had fled from Iran following the Cultural Revolution in '79. She was very, very small at the time. I don't remember how many years old she was, but I have concerns around her, not because of her politics, but because McKay is married to her and her politics, and I wonder how many of her pet projects will become his pet projects. So things like she is vehemently in support of Greta Thunberg and the whole climate change, Paris Accord, all of that stuff. McKay is not really anti-environment, but he is kind of anti-Canadian energy industry. He is anti-Canadian oil, and he is
one of the only industries we have left.
But he doesn't. Yeah, he doesn't seem to want to talk much about the carbon tax, and I think that I wonder about his wife's pet projects with climate change and other socialist agendas that might be leaking into his politics.
Yeah.
I also have concerns about her pet project of the overthrow of the current Iranian state. She spends a lot of her time as a social do-gooder. You guys will remember when the Ukrainian Airlines flight was shot down leaving Tehran earlier this year, and there was a number of Canadians on board that were killed.
There were also a bunch of spies allegedly.
Well, neither here nor there. I mean, they traveling on Canadian passports. They are Canadian, whether I'd like that or not. And generally, if we go back to the episode where we talked about that, I don't, because our passports are basically valueless because anyone can get one. But as soon as that flight was shot down, she immediately wanted the government to start saber rattling on her behalf, and was totally on board with a U.S. invasion of Iran and the missile lobbing that the Donald was doing at the time. And
yeah, I'm curious.
I think that makes for a very unstable leader of our government if his wife is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, the next time that the U.S. starts bombing some dude named Salami, like she's going to be telling her husband, like, you got to do that too, right?
Yeah, but thanks to him, we don't have anything to throw at them.
Yeah.
It's true. I don't want us to be getting into more wars in the Middle East. Afghanistan should have been a lesson to us, and I don't want us to be involved in some nonsense conflict in Syria.
Yeah,
there's no good that can come of that for us. I don't want any part of this, like overthrow Iran, invade Syria, change the dynamic of that part of the Middle East again. I don't want any part of that for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's their problem, not ours. Like,
right. But her pet project is rehabilitating ISIS fighters. She's appeared on stage with alleged ISIS members. She's very against the current Iranian regime. She's also participated in We Charity events, which is how that ties into the rehabilitated ISIS fighters.
Yeah, I mean, I have a great rehabilitation program for them. So, I mean,
is it ultra long range or ultra short range?
Well, I mean,
or
I
just
guess
somewhere in the middle.
There's a long drop and a short stop. Let's put it that way. It's very cost effective. So I'm happy to take all of the money from We Charity to help rehabilitate them.
For me, McKay, the big detractor for McKay was how quickly he attacked O'Toole in all the campaign emails that I was getting, like 4 and 5 a day.
Yeah.
And I genuinely don't care for that. Run for yourself and not against somebody else, right? We all win. We all win until you start pushing other people below you. And I really didn't care for that. It left a bad taste in my mouth.
Well, I think that's part of the mediocrity with McKay. I don't think that he has a lot of merits to run on, so he's running on, well, I'm better than everybody else because look at my experience. Don't look at what I actually accomplished, because it's not a very good list, but
look at where
I'm definitely better than everyone else. Yeah.
Look at where he's been. And I agree with what you said earlier. There's a certain amount of, there's a certain balance, I suppose, between having enough experience to understand what's happening and understand how to deal with it, and having, being a lifelong politician who's just in it for a paycheck and worried more about the next election than actually doing anything. Unfortunately, I think McKay falls into the latter category rather than the former.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be one thing if he had been in for a long time, but had actually succeeded in accomplishing some key things, or had been an integral part of some things being accomplished. But yeah, it just looks like he kind of just coasts through it and somehow gets into these important positions, but never really pulls anything off.
Well, and
so sorry, I'm just going to address YouTube feedback. Pat, sorry, we already did Leslie Lewis. You'll have to go back in the video or wait till the podcast comes out.
Yeah, go back in time. We talk about it.
She was first. It was great.
Yeah, ladies first, because we're cisgendered and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, I think she's probably the most interesting candidate of the 4 options.
I agree, and I mean there are some detractors with that.
She ticks a lot of boxes for me, though, but like there's a couple of the ones that she doesn't that are just like
meme boxes.
Yeah, yep. That are just like just.
Yep. No, I hear you. I just as a kind of a declaration of conflict or whatever. I've already mailed my ballot back. I made my decisions, and she did not rank first on my ballot when I did that.
Well, I mean, if we want to compare notes and disclose that, I have not submitted my ballot, but it's all filled out, and I know what I'm doing with it.
Yep. If it's proper etiquette, I'm more than happy to rank them. Sloan didn't make my.
I don't know if it's proper etiquette, but it's a podcast, so we can kind of do what we want. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, do you want to do yours, and I can do mine, and then Gavin, and then we can talk about the other two candidates?
I put O'Toole first, and then Lewis, and then McKay, and I left Sloan off.
Huh. Gavin, have you done yours yet?
I haven't filled it out yet, but I'm 99.9% sure how I'm going to go with it. I was kind of hoping that maybe some of this conversation this evening would maybe sway me one way or the other. But there are two candidates that I am definitely leaving off, and that's Sloan and McKay. And then it's most likely going to be O'Toole then Lewis.
Yeah, I'm also O'Toole and then Lewis.
But like also the ranked ballot system, though, may strategically alter some things. Because nonsense.
Well, and that's why I put Lewis as my second choice, because the whole weird way that they do, because it's not really ranked. It's ranked if they don't have enough people the first time around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, because if there's a clear majority on the first one, then that person wins. But if there's no clear majority, then they go to round 2. Which I don't understand, because then you just discard everybody's first choice. Like,
yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
But since when do politics have to make sense?
Yeah,
it would be so much less entertaining if it did.
If it was actually like a weighted ballot, I would be better with that. But
yeah,
sorry, go ahead, Alan.
You live in the GTA-ish.
Yeah.
Is Durham region part of the Greater Toronto Area?
I mean, yes and no. Like, technically, no. Like, it's a separate region, but like it is immediately adjacent. Right? Yes.
Peel region is also separate. Mississauga is part of Peel region, is it not?
Yes, but
that would be classed as GTA.
Yeah, so I mean, there's political boundaries and geographic boundaries. So like, geographically, we get lumped into the GTA because there is no real separation between where I am and where Toronto is in terms of like rural area.
Okay.
Not that there's a whole lot of that when you go.
Well, like, hold on. With Peel, I'm going to say anything north of Brampton is not part of the GTA. Like Caledon, Orangeville, I don't count those as part of the GTA.
Yeah. Okay. But like, yeah, so there's like the Greater Toronto Area to me is like, it's the giant concrete mass when it's geographically. But yeah, in terms of political boundaries and all of that, like totally separate, all of them.
Okay, and the reason I asked this is because one of the campaign emails I got from McKay was railing against O'Toole, who claimed he had won in the GTA when he is an MP for Durham, and then went on to say that Durham is not part of the GTA. And so, not being from that part of the world, I don't really have an opinion one way or the other than it seems like a really odd thing to comment on unless you're fishing for dirt.
Yeah, like where was he when Sean was claiming that when he's from Guelph, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean, like geographically, I mean, effectively, it is the GTA. It's, you know, especially if you're talking like Ajax, Pickering, or whatever. But like, if you start talking like Oshawa and like further out, then you're like, yeah, I don't know about that, bud. That's like an hour away. Like, but I mean, people need to stop thinking of the GTA as the center of the universe and that it makes all of the decisions, because it doesn't. And that's not exactly a claim to fame. But, you know, if you are a conservative politician and you do well anywhere that's close to a major city, that is something, I guess, to be congratulated for, because typically that's where the shitty voters live.
So again, I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
the kind of the attack between McKay and O'Toole, and you know, it almost seems like a straw man fallacy, or red herring is what I was going for there. You know, it was something that didn't need to be discussed.
Yeah, there's so many other more important things that if you want to call somebody on, you could call them for. That seems like it's just like why are you even bringing that up?
It's so much easier to argue about the GTA than it is to argue about actual politics.
Fair.
Yep. So that was my so that's kind of the reason that McKay ranked lower for me in my ballot, and those were the main reasons. And I, you know, and then you look at his actual political record, and I you know, can't say much more about that.
Well, let's talk about O'Toole a bit. 47 MP for Durham. We've discussed that because we're not sure where Durham is, or we're not sure if it's within the GTA or not. Maybe that's
we're not sure if it's relation to the rest of the world. Yeah.
Currently serving as the Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs. And has been in that position since 2017. Prior to that, Shadow Minister of Public Safety, Emergency Preparedness, and prior to that, Minister of Veterans Affairs under Harper. The last go round, O'Toole came in third for the Conservative leaders. Prior to being in politics, he went to the Royal Military College and served in the Air Force. I believe he was a search and rescue pilot for a helicopter squadron, and then.
I believe it was 427 Wing in Trenton.
Well, there are better postings, but 427, I have good things to say about the boys over there. So, after he left the military, he was a lawyer. There's a theme here. Everybody's a bloody lawyer.
Well, you know what they say.
I have
one lawyer in town, they'll go broke. Two lawyers in town, they'll be rich, and everyone else will be broke.
Probably not wrong. O'Toole. So let's talk about some O'Toole policies. The big con in my mind. Well, okay, so there's a couple, but the big on paper con. He's in favor of scrapping the carbon tax, but he's also in favor of some sort of carbon pricing scheme. So, which is it, Aaron?
I think, honestly, and I realize that this is going to be an unpopular opinion, both on the panel and with the listeners here. But if it's applied properly, I think the carbon pricing is good for the consumer, because what it's going to do, if it's applied equally and fairly across all sectors and all businesses, and it doesn't allow for a cap and trade system specifically, is it's going to force businesses to absorb more of that cost into their profits and deliver a better price to consumers rather than simply passing a tax along, if it's applied properly.
And I don't trust them to apply it properly.
I don't either.
This is my concern with it.
No, I don't think it's possible. I don't have enough faith in any government to actually do anything that makes sense. But I think if my vision is, if it were applied properly, it could actually benefit the consumer rather than just being a tax. It could actually eat into their profits by making it a low bid situation for we the people.
I mean, maybe, but also I kind of doubt it, because that's typically not how that works. They're just gonna increase their profit margin by upping their price, and it's still going to cost me more as a consumer. It's just where my dollars are going end up being different. Instead of going in as a tax, it ends up going in as a other thing. It goes to the company that I'm paying, that then goes to a tax to the government. Like, it's just rearranging how the money gets around. It doesn't rearrange the fact that the money is moving around.
That's true, but it also makes it a better tax deduction for me at the end of the year, potentially.
True. There may be consumer benefits in that regard, and I can see that.
Again, and it's only if it's applied properly, and I don't have enough faith in anybody that can actually do that.
I don't trust the government to do that. And that's not a knock against O'Toole. I don't trust the government to implement any kind of tax or regulatory scheme.
kind of built a whole brand around it. Yeah.
Well, but even if he does it with the best of intentions and says that like this isn't a tax, whatever, when Industry Canada goes to implement it, like the bureaucrats there are still going to find a way to bend me over, just like they do with everything else.
Yeah.
The other piece with the con with this is just the way Aaron O'Toole presents. He's kind of a stodgy old white guy. He's not as old as McKay. McKay's got like 7 or 8 years on him, but O'Toole doesn't look healthy.
Yeah, like he's balding, he's pudgy.
Well, he looks like a retired Air Force captain, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the overweight banker dad in the neighborhood that wants to grill. Right? Like he's got his white New Balances that are covered in grass stains and his cargo shorts, and he just wants to grill.
I feel so attacked right now.
Well, if the New Balances fit.
You know, I mean, my running shoes happen to be Under Armours, and I mowed my lawn in Crocs today, but I feel very attacked by all of this. Mostly because
you know what I mean, though? Like he just
absolutely.
Like
I
McKay still looks athletic. O'Toole does not still look like an Air Force captain, although Air Force captains are pudgy to begin with. So while I attack officers for being officers,
like I
don't know.
I honestly can't get over the fact that his name is spelled wrong. He should be an AA Ron, and he's not. And I know that's not his fault, but I just can't get over it.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I don't think it's going to play particularly well at a general because he does look like an old white money dude.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, again, that's not necessarily his fault, but it's again, we're talking about two different things. We're talking
optics.
About are we talking about winning the conservative leadership race, or are we talking about winning the general election?
Yeah.
And
I mean, we all know identity politics are stupid. Well, okay, so
but identity politics is also how the game.
The panel knows this, and hopefully our listeners know this, but the general public doesn't. And and that's why, like, for certain things, like Lewis would play very well to those that care about identity politics, and O'Toole won't.
Right. Yeah, and that's my thing is.
When Trudeau goes against him, and it's like, do you want another old white guy?
And then they trot out the moderately youngish black woman from Toronto. Yeah. I don't know.
But then there's O'Toole rocking the dad bod and his New Balance and everything, and they're gonna be like, that's just another old white guy. At least Trudeau is the young white guy who's woke.
Isn't Trudeau like 43 though? Like, he's not that much younger than O'Toole, is he?
No, but he acts like a man child.
He looks. That's the
I don't know. He was pretty gray. He was looking pretty gray last time I saw him on the news. I stopped watching
the press conferences. Watch when they come around to the election though. He shaves, and then
slicks his hair back, puts on his funky socks, and
and he's taking photos with his shirt off again, and like sticking his tongue out and doing all the stupid nonsense that everyone loves about him.
That got him elected the last time.
Yeah. And like his funky socks, like, I mean, if you act like a child, people will think you're a child.
I have a hard time objecting to the funky socks. I wear funky socks. I like funky socks. But I also am not in public office, and I'm not the prime minister of a country.
And even if you were, I wouldn't mind. I just wish you had more things to make your brand about than your hair and your socks.
Yeah, if they're like, man,
like, I don't know, your politics.
Stupid smart and makes great decisions and has weird socks. That wouldn't be a problem.
Our economy is really doing great, and we are not suffering from any sort of recession as a result of giving out hundreds of millions of COVID bucks.
Yeah.
And also, he's got great socks. Like, that would be a different conversation than like, oh God, we're all screwed for like the next 4 generations because we have $1.2 trillion in debt, and this idiot's wearing his bloody socks again.
I wonder if we could get a pair of custom socks made that say "Money Printer Go Burr" and send them to him.
Yes. The short answer is yes, we can. And in fact, I think the minimum order is 12, so we can send them to his entire cabinet.
Excellent.
Perfect. Let's talk firearms with O'Toole. O'Toole, I don't think has the best firearms policy, but it's everybody that's not Derek Sloan, I like it. It's well thought out and it addresses a lot of my problems. So he's talked about going to a simplified classification system.
Palatable.
Go ahead.
Yeah, like it's just.
Well, I wouldn't even say palatable. Like this is pretty good. Like this is better than what Lewis has talked about because Lewis is like, I'm going to repeal some crap. Okay.
Yeah, but some of the other stuff, like the way that they word things, it makes it sound, don't get me wrong, better, but worse than it is, maybe.
Yeah, okay, well, let's look at some of O'Toole's firearms policy, a little bit deeper dive, because his policies on his website is not badly laid out.
Yeah,
so
I think
simplified classification system, totally get behind that.
Yeah.
Updating the language in the Firearms Act to include things like a definition of terms when we're talking about things like, what is a variant? Would love that. Firearms Act is food-barred, so yeah. On board with that.
Should also be one of those things they clarify. Exactly where that's measured.
Yeah, well, we'll get some stuff with that. Harmonizing the rules for discharging firearms on your own property, which means that you could discharge a restricted firearm on your property if it were illegal to discharge any type of firearm on your property, which super duper on board with that, because if you can shoot a gun on your property, you should be able to shoot any kind of gun on your property.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like it's not specifically prohibited, but it's not specifically allowed either. There's a lot of gray area, but this would be awesome.
There's a lot of gray area where you'll get charged and have your guns taken away, though. So
yeah, this would just squash that and be like, yep, good to go.
Another Firearms Act piece mandating a return of the 180-day period for redesignation classifications for the redesignated classification system to release firearm import decisions, and put the final authority for classification decisions back into the hands of cabinet. So this means the RCMP doesn't get to decide what a variant is anymore, and they only get 180 days to figure out if they can make something full auto or not. I like that.
Yeah,
because right now we're waiting for years for the firearms lab to do stuff. And
if you can't figure it out in that time, clearly it's not easily converted.
Right, and it's 6 months. I feel like that's a reasonable turnaround for importers and distributors to have to deal with. Right now, we're talking about years of wait time for new stuff coming into the country.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Which is silly.
Like, if the experts can't figure out how to do it in 6 months, it's not doable by the average person.
Right.
Carry on.
And then the other change is that we're going to reduce the amount of paper crimes. So no administrative expiry of paperwork leading to criminal charges or the seizure of firearms. So if you have an expired license, you can keep everything. You just can't buy anything more. That I got no problem with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a problem with it insofar as I have to have a license from the government to buy a firearm, but like in terms of like how the licensing regimes work.
But if for some reason you ever find yourself content with the number of firearms you have, despite the fact that the perfect number is whatever you have plus one.
Firearms and also ammunition. You wouldn't be able to purchase ammunition without a valid PAL.
Well, you can just reload. But like, yeah, if you're content with what you have.
Tell the government.
Yeah. Then yeah, why would you like need to do that? But yeah. It's a step forward and it's great.
You're not making criminals out of otherwise law-abiding firearms owners who don't need to or haven't remembered to file the appropriate paperwork, but they're not hurting anybody. They're not doing anything. They're not breaking any actual laws except for having out-of-date paperwork.
Yeah, or maybe like are stuck in a pandemic when everything is backlogged and like have done everything to do everything they can to get it done, but are now stuck waiting and waiting and waiting.
Shocking how often things like that happen.
Yeah,
I'm also super on board with most of those plans. It's also the most comprehensive of the 4 platforms in terms of firearms that I've seen. It's the most open, other than just we'll make changes and be in favor of gun owners. I've seen a lot of that posturing, but I haven't seen there's a whole lot of like
McKay's comments.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of like America, Jesus, and freedom, and not a whole lot of else, not a whole lot of anything else. So I appreciate the concrete steps.
Talk about freedom, Jesus. Talk about Derek Sloan.
So I did watch the campaign earlier, just to get myself in the mood for this. Anyways, carry on.
So Sloan, youngest person on the slate here. He's 35. He's currently MP for Hastings, Lennox, and Addington. He's been in that position since 2019. Prior to working in politics, he was also a goddamn lawyer. Everybody's a lawyer.
I don't know if he was actually a lawyer, though. He went to law school.
Says he worked in... His website says he worked in a private practice.
Not for very long.
I don't know in what sort of law.
Technically speaking, I worked in a private practice.
Because if you look at like when he graduated law school versus when he got into politics, the timing on that is very close. So it would have been for a very short period of time. However, he did work as a water fuel systems dude and a furniture liquidator, which was his own company.
Well, okay. So he was an entrepreneur of sorts, and perhaps not a very good one.
Yeah, went to school for business or whatever, graduated. And then, Pacific Union, which is a Seventh-day Adventist school in the U.S., is where he got his BA. And then, started like Sloan's Furniture Liquidators or something like that. Got out of that, went to law school, then got out, and then may have worked very briefly at a law firm, probably during like his interning or whatever, and then got into politics. So not like the other people that had like a actual law career where they practiced law for a couple of years, at least.
So I'm going to be honest. I don't know a lot about Sloan because I read his annoying emails, and he reminds me of like a whiny. He reminds me of the church lady sketch.
Yep.
From Saturday Night Live.
Absolutely.
And I can't stand him. And I don't know, like I have just an irrational like loathing of him because he's just like a whiny church lady. And I don't know what it is about him that bothers me so much. But he's just, maybe it's the like holier than thou attitude, or maybe it's like the overt Christendom, which I don't really care what most people's religion is as long as they don't want me to partake in their religionism. I really don't care. But I don't know, something about this guy, man. He just like, I feel triggered. I feel so very triggered.
According to the Law Society of Ontario, he does have a Law Society number, which I believe means that he has in fact been barred. So he is licensed to practice law. He has a business name of Sloan Law with a mailing address, but is currently not practicing.
Okay.
So that's what I've found out about that.
Interesting. He is also super duper pro-life. He has a 12-point plan laid out on his website. This guy like really likes long, detailed lists on his website.
Man, it sounds like it's an AA
really
thing.
Tell me a lot. Well, I really don't care for him, and I don't have a good reason why. Because like his positions on things generally don't seem awful. But he does not speak well, and he just seems whiny and pretentious.
I got a lot of angry man out of him. Like he's an angry man for no reason because he doesn't have anything to be angry about. Syndrome. Yeah, absolutely. I've always called it little guy syndrome, right? And I can't handle it. I left him off my ballot for a reason.
Yeah. Now the one upshot with all of this is his firearms policy is very good. Like, it's not enough to get me to vote for him, but man, some of the points that he raises in here, I think he'd be very good on the firearms file. I don't think he'd be very good as a party leader.
So let's hope he gets elected back into Parliament when the Conservatives form a majority, and that he has the ear of hopefully O'Toole that will, and their visions will align at least in substance.
Right, like some of the stuff on here is great, like repealing basically all of the firearms control stuff, going back to C-51 in '77. You know, the thing that like took away all the cool guns.
God, I want to foul.
So Bill C-71, C-42, C-68. That's the Firearms Act from 1995 with the PALs and everything. C-17 from 91, and C-51 from 77. That's the machine gun one. So, yeah, repeal all of those, 100%. Like, that's great.
Cool.
Remove non-violent firearms offenses. Again, yeah, on board. Firearms for judicious self-protection. I can get on board with that. Guns for self-defense. Cool. The right to not retreat when in your own home. Again, cool. Reinstate firearms training and target shooting in the cadet program, and a bunch of other stuff about cadets and shooting. And okay, I don't know that's really part of the firearms thing, but sure, I'm not opposed to that. I think the cadet program is a great and wonderful thing.
It teaches safety, right? It creates a safer generation.
If you're going to be part of cadets, you should probably learn how to shoot a gun, because it's kind of priming you for the military, where you learn how to shoot a gun.
Plus
it's really
things
fun.
Are different now than when I went through the cadet program at the end of the 90s, and like we shot guns, but maybe things are different now. I don't know.
When I was in cadets, we shot guns, but it was like not long after I aged out that people like you were down to 177 cal twice a year, 10 rounds each.
Okay. So maybe that stuff has changed. I'm not opposed to that. I just don't know that it's a relevant thing for like his election campaign.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the Firearms Act or anything, but like, yeah, not a terrible policy.
Eliminating automatic check of legal firearms owners when they're stopped for other offenses, basically taking the PAL stuff out of CPIC. Whatever, I'm neither here nor there on that. Firearms owners generally are not the problem. Most of the criminals don't have registered firearms anyway, so if you're doing warrant parole probation checks, that's all in CPIC, so I think this guy doesn't really understand how CPIC works.
Well, and also if he's repealing C-68, then there won't be PAL checks to begin with.
Right? So I don't know, like some of this stuff is kind of weird. Increasing the legal magazine capacity, but it doesn't say to what, so let's just, if we're getting rid of like C-68, it just means that there isn't magazine capacities, so it's redundant.
Yeah. Hey, full cap Tommy guns for all.
Hey, I'm so down with that.
If it ain't belt fed, I'm not interested.
Hey, you could do you, like.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have
and also make sure to go to church and vote for Sloan.
Yeah, it's specifically a Seventh-day Adventist church, because otherwise, yeah, Derek Sloan won't wear a Tommy gun under your pillow on Christmas or something like that.
You can't get a belt fed them, but you can get one of those Henry big boy rifles, loaded on Sundays and shoot all week.
Yeah.
Is that how Seventh-day Adventists work? I'm not really sure. I'm not up on my
I don't know.
My Christendoms.
I think every day they get one of those Advent calendars with chocolate in it.
Lucky guys. I'm that
a
might be enough to convert me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna die of something. I might as well enjoy it.
Yeah.
So there's some other stuff in that. His firearms policy is very comprehensive and is generally good, albeit redundant and kind of meandering. But I can't get on board with his program because he just doesn't strike me as somebody who can lead, because he's just whiny. All of his emails come across with a certain tone, and I just don't care for it.
Yeah. I
agree fully.
I also don't know how good his French is. I haven't heard him parlez-vous français, but I'm gonna say it's probably not very good. I guess we should touch on the other ones. Obviously, McKay fluent in French, although he did learn as an adult. And hearing O'Toole speak French, he parlez-vous like an Air Force captain. But at least he parlez-vous.
Yeah, and again, like how much of an issue is that really? If McKay can learn it, why couldn't any of the other candidates? Honestly, it's a low issue for me.
Does know it. It's just that I would say that he is not. He does not speak conversationally in French. It's a very staccato style of speaking.
I will on that point. O'Toole's platform is quite comprehensive about how he wants to recognize and secure the sovereignty of Quebec as an independent nation within the Federation of Canada, which I'm not sure that I specifically agree with, but I also realize it will go well for him as a candidate.
Yeah.
and again, it comes back to whether we're talking about the leadership election or the general election, and I think that will go well for him in the general election, and so it's probably something worth noting in the leadership race.
Yeah,
it doesn't hurt to know what his position is going into it.
If he's for that, I wonder if he would be for a very small group of people buying a chunk of land and farming their own compound called, for argument's sake, New Rhodesia, and having its own sort of autonomous area. Just out of curiosity,
as long as it has a national assembly, it's good, right?
Yeah, asking for a friend.
I suppose it depends on how big and how remote. I think that those are probably the two biggest questions. Now, one of the YouTube comments really makes really good sense when we're talking about the general election versus the leadership race. Would be voting for Lewis in terms of the moderates and the undecideds. I think once we get into the broader,
touched on this a little bit in the Lewis conversation, but yeah, I think she would do very well in a general election for people who would not generally vote or would not generally vote conservative. Your centrist and moderate and your undecideds.
Yep. And I think those are going to be the ones that the disenchanted centrists and moderates are the ones that are going to be the one that win the cabinet for the conservatives this round.
Yep.
But I don't know if she can pull in the funding dollars from the old white men that fund the Conservative Party. I don't know if they can bring in the funding dollars to support that.
Who else are they going to support? Right? Why do
they want to support anyone? That's
beyond the leadership. I think they would rather have a friendly majority than an unfriendly minority.
I hope that's the case. I don't know if that would hold though. I mean, I would hope that's the case, but I mean, I don't know, man. There are far too many people that have franchise. We need to reduce the number of people that are involved in politics.
Yeah.
Both in terms of who can be a politician and also who can vote for them.
Yeah. Stay tuned for next Wednesday's show about how we can do that.
If the I forget who said it. Actually, it's a politician friend of mine who said it. The first disqualifier for being a politician is wanting to be in politics.
Pretty much, yeah. The only person qualified is the person that doesn't want the job.
Yep. That was and that's, I mean, when you're talking about dealing with an entire country's policies, you need somebody that has the most objective opinion as possible, and that's usually someone that isn't angling for something for themselves.
Okay, so that leaves out everyone running for conservative leader.
Well, it leaves out everyone running for any political office entirely, theoretically. And that's where we can kind of come at that impasse. Yeah, absolutely. Or just everything is a referendum, right? We have the technology now that we can just have a vote every, the population can vote every week.
Again, I want to limit the number of people that have a say. So okay, everything's a referendum for the people that are allowed to vote, but we need to have a lot less people being allowed to vote because, I mean, the pigs will vote for the farmer every day because he feeds them. He's also the guy that puts them on the truck and takes them to slaughter at the end of their life.
That's true. And so we have 4 candidates. Well, we have 3 candidates and Derek Sloan.
Yeah.
if we're being honest about this, we have 3 candidates and Derek Sloan, and I don't know him. I listened to him in a couple of the debates, and he just seems like a Me Too kind of guy. But I'm.
And by that, do you mean the kind of guy that's going to get rolled up in a harassment lawsuit? Or...
No, more like, hey, here I am as well. Like, I'm also here. Listen to me.
Guys, look over here. I'm on this side of the stage. Pan the camera down.
Yeah.
Look at me. Look at me.
I think we're going to look back at this particular period of time, the January or the July to November of 2020, and we're going to compare Derek Sloan in the conservative leadership race to Kanye West in the presidential race in the U.S. and they're both there, but nobody really knows why, and nobody really cares.
But who has more #1 hits? That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that Derek Sloan is one of the people from the band Sloan, and therefore I have a certain image of who he is in my head, and I know that's not accurate, but it's a whole lot more entertaining when I think about it that way.
Yeah,
he's like they're like the Ramones. They all had to change their name to become part of the band.
Yeah.
Anyways, so we have 3 candidates. We have 3 real candidates. I would absolutely love to see.
I mean, I would even go so far as to say 2 candidates, really, because fuck McKay.
Okay, so unfortunately,
his eyes are too close
numbers
together, and his wife is not trustworthy.
One of the other biggest problems I have with McKay is that, like, the media and everybody seems to want us to vote for him and have him be like. So to me, no. Why is the leftist media pushing so hard for McKay to be the leader of the party?
Because I think he's a safe choice that plays well with them. Because I mean, I said it at the beginning of the show, he's a red Tory.
Yep.
Yeah,
absolutely.
but that's all the more reason why, to me, he's absolutely somebody that's getting left off of my ballot completely.
Well, and
along with Sloan.
And I think he's got too much history.
Yeah,
he's been in it for too long. Go take a break. Go do something else. Get some other kind of worldview from outside. Like get off Parliament Hill for a little bit. See what else is out there in the world, and come back with a fresh set of eyes. Change your opinion a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Let's try and wrap this up, I guess.
Yep.
You haven't got a Big Luau shirt, link in the show notes. Go get your official Big Luau shirt on Amazon so we get a cut of the affiliate revenue. Thank you,
Or
Amazon.
if you need anything else on the Amazon, click the link and then go buy the thing you need. Yeah.
Thanks to whoever bought the DLSR. I hope you enjoy your new camera. I certainly enjoyed the commission.
Yeah. Please tag us in your photos, unless they're private photos. Then just DM them to us.
That's right. Put those on our
sliding in.
Yeah.
Go and sign the petitions if you haven't signed the petitions. Links in the show notes. Go around. We'll go around anti-clockwise, I guess. Alan, where can everybody find you on the internet?
Easiest place to find me is on the other CPP, which usually broadcasts Sunday. Well, broadcasts Sunday night. Sometimes I'm on it. I missed last week because of a power outage. I'm missing this week because I'm on vacation. You can get me by email, alan@prepperpodcast.ca. That's Alan with 1 L.
Right on. Gavin, where can everybody find you?
The best place to find me for now is on the gram, Urbex_GTA.
If you listen to this long enough, you deserve a discount code. Go to RagnarokTactical.ca, use discount code Patriot at checkout, save yourself some money. Body armor is all kinds of back in stock. I have a bunch of different body armor.
You can't have a Big Luau shirt without body armor. I think that's a rule.
Yeah,
they go together.
Also, go back and check the back catalog of the other CPP for Andrew and I and Alan getting all autistic about body armor.
Oh man, that was a day, wasn't it?
It sure was. Sure was. I also have to apologize to Rod Giltaca. Rod is not running for the Conservative leadership, so we were not able to include Rod in tonight's show despite his best efforts.
Yeah, sorry, bud.
I mean, I'm not running for Conservative leadership either, but here I am.
Yeah, but you're on the other CPP, so it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, totally fine.
Yeah.
Totally fine. For all of our listeners out there in podcast land, I'd like to remind you that you are the true North, strong and free.